Good day, welcome to the Great White North. What makes a 100mm macro lens that much different from a 180mm lens? Well, not as much as you might think, but enough of a difference that one manufacturer produces both. This is Laowa's 180mm f4.5 1.5 times macro lens. There's a bunch of stuff in the name as well, but I can't remember. This is joining me today as I head up this bump that some consider a mountain, heading to a creek to look for some freshwater invertebrates. And this is not a comprehensive review. This is what I'm going to consider a one-day review. I have one day to make this video. It's 10 o'clock. We will see how the day goes. Before jumping into my thoughts and findings after actually using this lens, let me ramble through some of the more notable specifications first. And the first thing that caught my attention when removing this lens from its box is the weight. And considering the f4.5 aperture, it should not be too surprising that this lens is very lightweight, and I will explain why that's a great thing a little later on. Optical design, it has 12 elements in 9 groups, and some very quick test photos at my desk and in my backyard reveal that the images are sharp corner to corner. Moving to aperture, it has 9 aperture or diaphragm blades, and they produce some very pleasing looking bokeh. Insert examples of pleasing bokeh here. This 180mm lens is available in a few different lens mounts. There is the Canon RF, Canon EF, Sony E, Nikon Z, and L mount. What makes this a bit different and a bit special is that the L mount and the Canon RF, those are manual focus lenses, but the Canon EF, Sony E, and Nikon Z are available as autofocus lenses. That's exciting to see coming from Laowa. I don't think they have too many macro lenses with autofocus. Personally, I'm still just going to use manual focus, even if the autofocus is an option. There was a comment on a video I made recently, Laowa's 90mm lens. I reviewed that in 2022. An individual recently, they said that the manual focus on that lens was a deal breaker for them, as it didn't allow their camera's auto or integrated focus bracketing or focus stacking option to work, and that investing in said lens, they'd be stuck with manual focus stacking for the rest of their life. Maybe it's just me feeling old and everything hurts when I get up, but when I think back many decades ago when I was learning macro photography, I could not have dreamed about camera-based or integrated focus stacking. It just was never something I thought was an option. There were motor-driven, like screw focusing rails. You would encounter those in museums when they were documenting their like dead insect collection, and they'd make like stacks that were like 400 images deep of an insect. But again, back then, integrated camera focus stacking, focus bracketing was not something I ever thought of. And having learned how to make macro stacks, swaying back and forth like a drunken sailor, I continue to do so. Now on to a quick bit of fun where I'm going to compare this Laowa 180mm lens to a Canon RF 100mm. This is a lens I've used many times. I have actually chosen not to invest in it because I prefer the EF 100mm lens. It's a long story, I can tell you another time. I chose the RF 100mm because of one specific specification, being it has a 1.4 times magnification, which is very similar to Laowa's 1.5 times magnification. One of the first and most obvious differences between these two lenses, thanks to the focal length, is the angle of view or field of view. So the 100mm lens has a field of view of about 24 degrees, whereas the 180mm lens has an angle of view, field of view of 13.8 or 14 degrees. So it's a lot more of a narrower lens. Now, this is an example, some comparison shots. Both of these are captured at 1:1 magnification just to make things as fair as possible. And the most obvious difference is not in the foreground subject, more in the background. There's a little more visible in the background with the longer focal length thanks to its effective compression. Moving on to what I consider the most important difference between these two lenses is the minimum focusing distance. So with a 100mm lens, your minimum focusing distance is at about 26 centimeters. Now up to 180mm, your minimum focusing distance gets to 30 centimeters. Now, a 4 centimeter difference, it may not sound like a lot, but if you're photographing a skittish subject like a flighted insect, 4 centimeters really can be the difference between getting the shot and your insect just piecing out and buzzing away. So 4 extra centimeters is a fantastic thing. It's also great when you look at the working distance. With a slightly larger working distance, it's easier to add external light. And if you're photographing macro subjects at high magnifications, especially flighted ones, really you're going to be using external or additional light sources. Granted, there are many other differences between these lenses, but those are the key specifications that I really want to look at when you're comparing focal lengths of macro lenses. It is Monday. When you last saw me, it was Sunday, and this video is being published on Tuesday. It's a very quick turnaround. Sunday got very, very wet. The rain did not stop, and my gear also got quite wet, specifically my little lavalier microphone, which I forgot that I was wearing completely. So I apologize. What follows, the audio sounds like I'm underwater, but I don't really have enough time to capture it again. It is 3:04. It's been many hours since I began making this video, and in that time it has started to bucket rain. There's been some thunderstorms. I'm wearing wools, I look like a lemon, and despite that I'm very, very cold. There are still a few days left in summer. It is September, and that actually means that one of my favorite amphibian species is making its way from the shores and banks towards these streams and creeks, and it will do that throughout September and October to find a friend and to have some fun. Let's just say the next generation will benefit. That is the coastal tailed frog, and this is a very elusive, very skittish species, and in this stream ecosystem there is actually a very surprisingly healthy population. They're only about 1 to 2 centimeters in size. They're hopping around more than I've ever seen before, and the 1.5 times magnification of this lens is helping a lot. It is allowing me to fill the frame with those very, very small subjects. They're not as numerous, but there are the occasional mature coastal tailed frog here. They're a little bigger, 3.5 to 5 centimeters in size, 5 centimeters being a healthy female, females being a bit larger. And so with the 1.5 times magnification, I'm able to take more than just a portrait. I can focus on specific body parts like an eye, a foot, a leg, even the tail. It's allowing for some unique compositions. Now, the longer focal length of 180 millimeters, it is introducing a bit more vibration or shake to the composition than I expected. I haven't been able to capture any video that I would actually use because of this. I am using a very sturdy tripod. Even with photos, the shake and the vibration in the composition, it's taking a moment more to find focus and that composition I want. It's not massive, it's not a deal breaker in any sense, but just something to consider. It also means I'm using a slightly faster shutter speed to mitigate any motion blur that there might be. Now, that longer focal length, though, is so appreciated when it comes to that increased working distance or the minimum focusing distance. These frogs really, really are quite skittish, and being able to be a bit further away has seriously increased the number of keeper photos that I've captured today compared to any other day using any other lens. So interpret that as you may. If you photograph flighted insects, this lens will be very beneficial to your workflow. Like I said, I'm cold. I'm going to continue exploring this creek, but I'm not sure how much longer. I will give you a few more of my thoughts when I have an opportunity to warm up. Looking at the physical design of this lens, I mentioned earlier that it is very lightweight, and I realized I neglected to mention how little it actually weighs. I was on the side of a mountain, I forgot how much it weighs, and I didn't have the internet. So with the internet at my fingertips, it weighs about 500 grams, which really is not that much. You're not going to have shaking hands or fatigued arms after a full day of shooting. The build quality is fantastic. It's on par with every other Laowa lens that I have used. It feels strong and it instills a bunch of confidence. The focus ring, you will notice, doesn't have any rubber or soft material, and this is going to improve the longevity of this lens if you treat it well. There's little embossed or engraved ridges here. It's very easy to turn, and the focusing ring itself, it rotates about 270 degrees, which is terrific for making very small adjustments to focus at higher magnifications. My one and only nitpick with this lens is the iris or the aperture ring. I did find myself bumping it or moving it by accident on a couple of occasions. So yesterday afternoon, I came across this absolutely gorgeous beefcake of a northern red-legged frog. And as I was trying to compose and looking through the EVF of my camera, it was very sluggish. It was trying its best to brighten up the EVF. And I realized that I had bumped this all the way to f32. It's not a deal breaker. I'm sure after a few days of using this lens, you would learn how to hold it properly and not adjust the iris accidentally. I absolutely love numbers and math, so to wrap things up, let me reiterate just how much of a difference this lens and its amazing 14 centimeter working distance, how much of a difference that makes in the number of shareable photos I capture. By shareable photo, I mean something that I could put on social media, but maybe not make its way to a website portfolio. So yesterday, between 11:30 a.m. and 4 p.m., I captured 157 photos, and 24 of those photos, or about 15%, are what I would consider a shareable photo, which I think is pretty impressive, and it's not really a reflection on me as a photographer, but it's more a reflection on what this lens allowed me to do that I probably couldn't do with a lens with a smaller working distance. After using this lens for just one day, I can confidently say that Laowa will be selling many of these. Priced at just 500 American dollars, providing amazing image quality and a very useful working distance, this lens will appeal to many photographers, hobbyists and professionals. As usual, huge thanks to Laowa for letting me use this lens. It was a lot of fun to play with. I would also add, it endured a lot yesterday. Sunday was a very rainy, dirty shoot. In the creek, my hands were never clean, and this lens emerged unscathed. I can't really comment on the designed weather resistantness of this lens, but I would give it a big thumbs up there. Also, this video has been a bit rough around the edges, I admit, especially when compared to other videos I have produced, but I do hope that you have found it helpful. It has been fun just to make a 1 or 1.5 day video. With that, if you have liked this video, hit that like button. If you have a question or a comment, put it down below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.